The hound came down the length of the hall at a dead run, the way it did for every stranger, and the whole household stopped what it was doing to watch a new companion be terrified. They had seen it 11 times. The dog was a grey wolfhound of enormous size and no manners whatever. It had been at Ravensworth for 6 years, and in 6 years it had put 2 guests up onto furniture, torn the coat of a bishop, and reduced 3 separate applicants for the post of companion to the dowager into a state from which no amount of tea could recover them. The Duke would not have it destroyed and would not have it chained. It was the single most discussed animal in the county. Anne Carrow set down her box and did not step back, and said Bran. The dog stopped so hard its feet went out from under it on the marble. Then it came the last 4 yards on its belly, whining like something being let out of a trap, and put its enormous grey head against her skirts, and Anne Carrow went down on one knee in the front hall of Ravensworth, with her arms round a hound that had terrorised the county for 6 years, saying nothing at all. The footman dropped a candlestick. It knew her name, Mrs., Pettifer said in the housekeeper's room, for the 4th time. No, listen, it didn't know her, she knew its name. She said Bran. Nobody's called it Bran. His Grace calls it the dog. It's been the dog 6 years. Then she's heard the name somewhere. From who? It came out of Cumberland in a cart with no papers and a rope on it. Mrs. Pettifer put her cup down. You may say what you like. That woman walked into this house and named that animal, and the animal went down on its belly, and I have been in service 31 years, and I've not seen the like. The Duke of Ravensworth heard the story at breakfast, disbelieved it, and went to find out. He found her in his mother's sitting room, reading aloud from a 2-day-old newspaper, which was the Post. Companion to the Dowager, £40, arrived Tuesday, and he found the hound lying across the doorway with its chin on its paws in an attitude of such complete domestic idiocy that Charles Ashcombe stood in his own corridor for some seconds, unable to make the animal in front of him agree. With the animal he had owned for 6 years. You, he caught himself. Miss Carrow, she rose. The dog did not. Your Grace. I am told the dog knew you. I knew the dog, Your Grace. It is not the same thing, and the household has got it round the wrong way. Anne Carrow folded the newspaper over her finger. I should have said so at once, and I did not, because I had been in the house 4 minutes, and I could not think how the sentence went. I have thought about it since. She looked at him levelly. I raised him, from 9 weeks. In Cumberland. He was mine for 2 years, and he was taken from me, and I have not seen him since he was 2 years old, and he is 8 now, and he knew me in a hallway after 6 years. Charles Ashcombe looked at the dog. The dog thumped its tail twice against the floor without lifting its head, which it had never done in his life. Taken from you, he said. Yes, by whom? By the man who sold him to you, Your Grace, said Anne Carrow, for 11 guineas, in a cart with a rope on him, and I have spent 6 years finding out where he went. She had not come for the post. That was the second thing, and she said it herself, before he could ask it, which he understood later was the most dangerous honesty available to her. I answered the advertisement because it was Ravensworth. I would have answered anything that was Ravensworth. I have been a companion in 4 houses in 6 years, and I have taken every position that came within 30 miles of this one. And I am telling you that, before you find it out from somebody else, because it will sound very much worse in another mouth than it does in mine. You came into my mother's household under false pretences. I came into your mother's household under entirely true pretenses and a private motive, which is not the same crime, and I would ask your grace to be exact, because the difference is the whole of my character. She had gone rather white, but her voice did not move at all. I read to her 4 hours a day. I write her letters. I have not been asked to do a thing I have not done. You may dismiss me for the motive if you like, and I will go without argument, but I'll not have it said I was idle in the post. Charles found that he was holding the door frame. What was he taken for? For 11 guineas, Anne said again. My father kept the hounds at Furness for Lord Ardley. He died in the spring of the year Bran turned 2, and the estate was sold up, and everything in the kennels was sold with it, including a dog that had been a runt and been nursed by hand by the kennelman's daughter, and did not appear on any list as belonging to anybody at all. She stopped, started again, more evenly. I was 19. I stood in the yard and watched a man I did not know put a rope on my dog, and I had no more legal interest in him than in the weather. That is the whole story, Your Grace. It is not a very good one. It is only mine. He should have dismissed her. He was aware of it for 11 days. What he did instead was watch, which he was later obliged to admit was not the same as deciding. He watched a woman read aloud to his mother in a room where a hound lay across the door and did not once lift its head. He watched her cross the stable yard at 4 in the afternoon and watched the dog come out of the hay barn to walk at her hip without being called. He watched, at the end of the 2nd week, an under-gardener trip on the terrace steps and go down hard, and watched the hound get up and then simply stand there, ears forward, doing nothing at all, because Anne Carrow had said Bran, leave in a voice that would not have carried across a small room. Nobody at Ravensworth had ever got that animal to leave anything. How is it done? He asked her, on the terrace, later. It is not done. It was done 6 years ago by a girl of 17 with nothing else to do all winter. She did not look up from the mending in her lap. You cannot have it, Your Grace, and I say that kindly. It is not a trick I could teach your grooms. He is not obedient. He has never once been obedient in his life. He simply has one person he has decided about, and he decided it before he had his 2nd teeth, and no amount of 6 years appears to have shifted it. And I have had him for 6 of the 8. Yes, fed him, housed him, defended him to a bishop. Yes, Anne agreed, and he would eat your hand off in a bad month, and he sleeps across my door, and I am sorry, Your Grace, but you did ask. Charles Ashcombe laughed, properly, out loud, alone on his own terrace with a companion at £40 a year, and found that he had not done it in a while. You are the first person in this house in 6 years to tell me that Animal does not love me. He does not dislike you, Your Grace. That is not nothing from him. Anne bit off her thread. You kept a dog nobody could handle for 6 years and would not have it destroyed, and I want you to know I have thought about that a great deal on the road between 4 houses. Whatever else is true, he was fed, and he was not chained, and he was not shot, and there were 6 years in which any of those could have happened, and none of them did. That is very nearly gratitude. It is exactly gratitude, and I would rather say it now than have it come out later as an argument. She looked up at last. I have been in your house 4 weeks, and I have been braced the whole of it, Your Grace. Every morning I have woken up expecting to be sent off by the afternoon post. I am telling you thank you now, in case I do not get the chance to say it civilly. Charles looked out over his own park for a while. Nobody in this house has ever thanked me for anything, he said, without also wanting the next thing. Then I shall be careful not to want anything, said Anne, and you may put it down as an experiment. The dowager, who was 71 and had been described by her own son as unhelpfully observant, formed her opinion in the 3rd week and did not trouble to keep it. "You may tell me to be quiet," she said from the chair by the fire, "and I shan't be. You read better than the last 3, and you do not stop reading when I close my eyes, which the last 3 did, because the last 3 were reading for me, and you appear to be reading for the book." She tapped the arm of the chair. "Also, that dog has not been in this room in 6 years, and it is now in it every afternoon, and I find I sleep considerably better with the door blocked by something that size. I can move him, madam. Do not you dare." A pause. "What is your Christian name, girl?" "Nobody has told me." "Anne?" "Anne," the dowager repeated. "Well, my son has looked in at that door 11 times in 3 weeks, Anne, and he did not look in at all in the whole of last year, and I am 71, not dead." His brother's widow arrived in November, which she did every November, and which the household braced for the way one braces for weather. Lady Cecily Ashcombe had been mistress of Ravensworth for 2 years, and had expected to be mistress of it for 40. Her husband had died at 31, and the title had gone sideways to Charles, and Cecily had gone to the dower house at Bram with an income, a grievance, and a very great deal of time. She noticed the dog on the 1st evening. She noticed the companion on the 2nd. "You have a woman in this house who is not what she says she is," she told Charles pleasantly over the port. "The whole servants' hall knows it. She came here for the animal. She has said so herself, apparently, which I confess I find either very honest or very clever, and I have never once found those 2 things easy to tell apart." She turned her glass. "Do you know what she was before? 4 houses in 6 years, Charles. 4 companions do not move 4 times in 6 years unless something moves them. She has explained the 4 houses. To you." Cecily smiled. "Everything is explained to you, my dear. You are a duke. It is the great disadvantage of the position. One never in one's life hears the version that is not being explained." It took Cecily 5 weeks. And it was, Anne thought afterward, extremely well done. She did not accuse her of anything. She wrote to the 4 houses. 3 of them answered that Miss Carrow had been satisfactory and had left of her own accord. The 4th, a Mrs. Bewley of Kendal, whose son had been 30 and unmarried, and had made Anne's last 4 months there an education in the specific limits of a companion's protection, answered that Miss Carrow had been dismissed for conduct, which was true in the sense that Mrs. Bewley had dismissed her, and false in every sense that mattered, and impossible to disprove by any means whatever. Cecily put the letter on her brother-in-law's desk in December, and did not say a single word about it, which was the cleverest part. "She has shown you a letter from Kendal," Anne said. She had come to the study herself, which nobody in that house did, and she had come within the hour, because Mrs. Pettifer had seen the letter go in, and Mrs. Pettifer had, over 4 months, become an ally in the way that housekeepers do when a woman is civil to them. "Yes, may I see it?" "No," Charles said, and then, because she was standing very straight in front of his desk, with her hands folded, and it was costing her something, "it says you were dismissed for conduct." "It does not say what conduct. That is deliberate, and I am aware it is deliberate. It is deliberate, because there is nothing to write." Anne's voice was flat and careful. "Mrs. Bewley's son came into my room in the November, and I put a chair under the handle, and in the morning I went to his mother, which was my error. I was 23, and I thought a mother would take a mother's part. She dismissed me that afternoon. She was perfectly polite about it. She said it would be better for everybody. And she was right, in the sense that it was better for everybody except me." Charles Ashcombe sat very still. Why did you not tell me this in September? Because there is no version of that sentence a woman may say to a duke in his own study that does not sound like a woman getting ahead of something, said Anne. And because you would have believed me in September, and I would have spent every month since knowing you had believed me without proof, which is a debt, your grace, and I have found it is generally called in eventually. She lifted her chin. You have the letter now. You have my word. There is nothing else, and there is never going to be anything else. Believe whichever you like, Miss Carrow, and do not, she said, ask me what I want you to do about it. The last man who asked me that was Mrs. Bewley's own attorney, and what he meant was that he would like the matter finished. I am not asking you for anything. I am telling you what happened. Those are different, and I have got very tired of the difference. He did not dismiss her. He also did not say he believed her, which took him 9 days, and the 9 days nearly cost him everything. Because Cecily had a second move, and the second move was the dog. She made it at the New Year in front of 11 guests, and she made it with real skill. She simply asked at the dinner table, in a tone of the friendliest curiosity, how it was that Miss Carrow had come to know an animal purchased in Cumberland 6 years before, and let the table arrive by itself at the only conclusion available to a room that had not heard the true one. That the companion had known the dog because the companion had known the man who sold it. That 11 guineas is a strange price, and a cart with no papers is a strange cart, and that a dog which appears on no list and belongs to nobody is precisely the kind of dog that is stolen. That Miss Carrow had not come to Ravensworth to find her dog. She had come because a thief's confederate had spent 6 years wondering whether anyone at Ravensworth had ever thought to ask where the animal came from. It was, Anne thought, sitting at the foot of the table with her hands perfectly steady in her lap, an extraordinarily good lie. It used every true thing. It required no evidence whatever, and there was precisely one man in England who could contradict it, and he had sold a dog for 11 guineas in Cumberland in 1812, and could be anywhere on earth. She did not defend herself at the table. That was the thing Charles could not stop turning over afterward, that she sat through the whole of it with her hands in her lap and her back straight, and said nothing at all, and that when a woman on her left asked her directly, kindly, whether it wasn't the strangest coincidence, Anne had said only, "It is not a coincidence, madam. I have explained it to his grace, and it is his to repeat or not," and had gone back to her plate. 11 people watched a duke decline to repeat it. He did not decline out of doubt. He declined because he had not the faintest idea, in that moment, how to say it, because the true version required him to announce to his own dinner table that he had bought a stolen dog and never asked, that a woman had followed it across 6 years and 4 counties, and that he had known this since September and kept her in the house anyway. Every word of it was true, and every word of it sounded, in his own head, exactly like a man being managed. So he said nothing for the length of one course, which is not very long, and which was more than long enough. By the time he had worked out the sentence, she had left the table. She left the next morning. She did not wait to be dismissed, and she left the dog, which was the thing that broke her. "He is yours," she told Mrs. Pettifer, "in the yard, in the dark, at 6. Legally, and by 6 years of feeding, and by every measure that anybody in a courtroom would recognise. I came here knowing that. I want it written down somewhere that I never once tried to take him. Miss Carrow, tell his grace." She got up onto the carrier's cart. "Tell him I said the dog stays." The hound followed the cart to the end of the drive and stood at the gate for 11 hours and would not be got in, and bit the second footman when he tried. Charles came down to it at dusk and sat on the mounting block in the cold for a considerable time, and the dog did not look at him once. "She has left you to me," he said, eventually, to an animal that had never obeyed anybody. "Do you understand that? She could have taken you. You'd have gone up onto that cart and I could not have stopped you, and there is not a magistrate in England who would have made a fuss over 11 guineas. She left you because she said she'd not be a woman who took. And because I did not open my mouth for the length of one course at my own table." The dog stood at the gate. "Yes," Charles said, "that is about the size of it." He went to Cecily first, before Cumberland, because he was not yet clever and had to be taught. "She has gone," he said. "You will be pleased. I am relieved, which is different." Cecily poured. "You will thank me by Easter, Charles. A companion who arrives with a private history and a claim on your property is not a small thing, whatever her eyes are like." She left the dog. Well, she would, wouldn't she? Cecily said it without a flicker. It is precisely what one would do if one wanted to be sent for. And Charles Ashcombe, standing in the dower house at Bram, understood two things at once: that there was no fact in the world that could not be turned by a woman with time and a grievance, and that this was itself the answer, because a story which explains every possible fact explains nothing at all, and he had been letting one govern his house since November. He left within the hour and went north, and did not tell his solicitor until he was past Penrith. Charles Ashcombe rode to Cumberland in January, which his solicitor advised against, and which took him 19 days. He did not go looking for the man who had sold the dog. He went looking for the sale, and found it not in Cumberland at all in the end, but in a Kendal auction house. In a bound book, in a clerk's copperplate, the Furness Kennels, the estate of the late Lord Ardley, dispersed 1812, 41 entries. 40 of them were named hounds with pedigrees. The 41st read, 1 grey, 2 years, no papers, kennelman's. Sold, 11 GNs, kennelman's. The clerk who had written it was still alive and remembered nothing at all about it, and then prompted. Remembered one thing, that there had been a girl in the yard who had made a considerable fuss and had been removed, and that he had written kennelman's rather than none, because the girl had stood in front of him and told him the dog's name, and he had felt, he said, a bit of a brute about the whole business. Did she say the name? Sir, it were 19 year of hounds ago, did she say the name? Bran, said the clerk. It be Bran. She said it about 40 times. Charles Ashcombe stood in an auction house in Kendal in January and had to put a hand on the counter. Would you write that down, he said, what you have just told me, in your own words, and sign it, and I will pay whatever it costs to have it witnessed properly. And I would like you to understand, before you write it, that a woman has spent 6 years being nobody on the strength of what you did not write in 1812. The clerk looked at him. I did write it, sir, he said. That's the thing. I wrote kennelman's when I'd been told to write none. It's the only crooked line in 19 year of that book, and I've thought on it once or twice since. He reached for a pen. I'll write it. He came back to Ravensworth on the 9th of February with a certified copy of a page from an auctioneer's book, and he did not go to Anne Carrow with it, because he had finally understood something about her that had taken him 5 months. He went to Cecily. You will read that, he said, and then you will write to every person who sat at my table on the 2nd of January, and you will tell them you were mistaken. Cecily read it. Her face did not change. It proves the dog was the kennelman's. It proves nothing about the daughter. It proves she told a clerk that dog's name in 1812, Charles said, in front of a witness who has signed a statement to that effect. 6 years before she walked into my hall and said it again. You may keep the rest of your account if you can make it stand up with that in it. He took the paper back. You cannot. I have tried, on the road, for 4 days, because I wanted to be certain I was not simply believing what I wished to believe. You are besotted, Charles, and it is embarrassing. I am nothing of the sort, said the Duke of Ravensworth. I am a man who owned an animal for 6 years and never once asked where it came from, because nobody makes a duke ask. That is not besottedness, Cecily. That is the first piece of arithmetic I have done in 11 years, and I find I have been living in a house where nobody has ever had to finish a sentence in front of me, and I am done with it. Cecily wrote the letters. She went to Bath in the spring and did not come back for 4 years. He found Anne Carrow in Kendal, in a milliner's back room, trimming bonnets at 9p a day. She did not stand up when he came in. You have the auction book, she said. Mrs. Pettifer wrote. She writes to me, Your Grace, which you may consider a considerable breach, and which I hope you will not. I have the auction book. Then it is settled, and you needn't have come 19 miles to tell me so. I did not come to tell you so. Charles Ashcombe stood in a milliner's back room with his hat in his hands. I came because you told me in September that a belief without proof is a debt, and I have spent 4 months and 19 days getting the proof so that when I say this it is not a debt. He put the paper on the table. That is yours. Not a copy, the certified original, and there is a second in my solicitor's hands, and if anybody in England ever says that word about you again, you may put it in front of them without asking anybody's leave, including mine. Anne Carrow looked at the paper for a long moment and did not touch it. And the dog? The dog has not eaten properly since the 4th of January and has bitten 2 of my people and will not come off the gate, Charles said, and I have come to ask you to marry me, and I want it clearly understood, by you and by the county, that those are 2 entirely separate applications, and the second does not depend on the first. Say the second one properly then, Anne. He put the hat down. I have never once in 11 years been told a thing I did not ask to hear, except by you, and I have discovered that a man cannot live his whole life in a house where the sentences stop when he comes in. That is not a compliment to your character. It is a statement about my own, and it is the only honest reason I have. You have not asked, Anne said, whether I would have come back for him. The dog. If you had written and said come and fetch him, he is yours, no conditions. I want you to ask me, because you will wonder later, and I would rather answer it now than at 40. Would you? Yes, in a morning. She said it steadily. And I would have taken him and gone and never once written to you, Your Grace, because a man who returns a dog to buy a conversation is a man I have met in 4 houses. That is the whole distance between what you have done and what you might have done, and it is 19 days wide, and I have been sitting in this room for 5 weeks trimming bonnets at 9p and wondering which of the 2 you were. Charles Ashcombe said, And you went to Kendal for a clerk's book before you came to me, said Anne. You did not come to be forgiven. You came with the thing that means I shall never need to be forgiven by anybody again. She picked up the certified page at last, and her hands were not entirely steady. That is a considerably better reason than the dog. She stood up. There is a bench on the south terrace at Ravensworth that has been widened at some expense for no reason a visitor could guess. The reason is generally lying under it. Bath again, Charles said, coming out with the letters. Cecily writes that she has forgiven us, which I gather is a great deal easier at that distance. Let her. The Duchess of Ravensworth did not look up. She had the auctioneer's page framed on the wall of her own sitting room, which the county found eccentric and which she had never once explained to anybody. The kennels want doing, by the by. Properly, I have written it out, 9 runs, and the whelping boxes off the south wall where they'll get the morning sun, and a cottage for whoever keeps them. You are proposing I employ a kennelman. I am proposing you employ a kennelman, Anne agreed, at a wage, on a written agreement, and that every animal in those runs appears in a book with a name against it, and that the book is kept whether anybody ever asks for it or not. She turned the page over. It costs about £11 a year, Charles. I have done the sum 4 times. It is astonishing what £11 a year would have bought. Under the bench the hound shifted and put its chin across her foot and went back to sleep the way it had every night for 2 years, which the household had long since stopped remarking on, and which the Duke of Ravensworth still noticed every single time.